I hate having to do these. I've had to talk about too many of these guys. Too many times recently. You all know that I've made it pretty clear that, to me, the greatest time period for wrestling was the 1980s. And now we just keep seeing so many stars from that time period up and dying. We've lost Randy Savage. We lost the Ultimate Warrior. We lost the Dusty Rhodes. And now we've lost Roddy Piper. It's just, there's some people that you think that they're gonna live forever because they're just that type of charismatic person that you can't imagine the world without them. You know, I was thinking about, I've said for the longest time that Piper may not have been the most friendliest person, at least in the ring. Heard stories that outside the ring he was actually a different person. Actually, hear a lot about that, about wrestlers being different people outside the ring. But besides that point, the main thing is, love him or hate him, I've always had to say that Roddy Piper was the greatest bad guy heel wrestler of any time. I mean, guys like Triple H, CM Punk, Randy Orton, you just got a feeling that they all took their leads from a guy like Piper. I was actually talking to some people about this in the last couple of days since I heard the very unfortunate news, and they point something out very interesting. Actually a lot of his career was spent with Piper having a very popular fan base. He more or less became a de facto good guy, so to speak. And yet we'll always remember him as the guy who smashed a gold record over Captain Lou Albano's head, or smashed a coconut into the face of Jimmy Superfly Snuka. But eventually he became the type of guy that you cheered for blasting Morton Downey in the face with a fire extinguisher. And I got to thinking about that, and I guess in that way, Piper went from being the greatest heel wrestler of all time to being the first great anti-hero of wrestling. Even when he was going after guys like Hulk Hogan in the early 80s of the rock and wrestling era, there was one thing about Piper. He never allied himself with, guys like Bobby the Brain Heenan and his Heenan family. In fact, later on, he actually found himself going up against the Heenan family, and that's kind of what I think started turning a lot of people into his favor. But that was kind of who Piper was. He was the guy who always stood up for his own beliefs, whether you liked it or not. I mean, he was his own man and did whatever he felt like, and he wasn't afraid to tell it like it was. And he did more or less gain a lot of respect for that. It's like, in a way, you would say, he once said, "I was rowdy before rowdy was cool." In a way, Piper was Stone Cold before Stone Cold was cool. We're actually pretty lucky that, when you think about it, that he lasted this long, because you may be aware, a few years ago, he had his battle with cancer, and the only reason they even discovered the cancer was because, at a WWE Taboo Tuesday or a Cyber Sunday pay-per-view, I'm sorry, my memory escapes me, I forget which one it was, but he got voted by the fans to be Ric Flair's tag team partner in taking on the infamous Spirit Squad. And so he got a medical test after the match, and that's when his cancer was diagnosed. And so it really was, the public's love of him that essentially saved his life and kept him going for a long time. He was from a time where wrestlers really were characters. And they were really fun to watch. And you don't see a lot of those guys in the business nowadays anymore. You look back at guys like Piper, Savage, Dusty, and Warrior. They really are people, wrestlers, in the ring, out the ring, they're never going to be duplicated. But they're probably never also going to be forgotten. I know I sure as hell will never forget Piper. And I know a lot of my fellow wrestling fans, they're never going to either. And in a way, maybe on some level he will live forever in that manner. Thank you all. I'm the Wrestling Mark.